I never imagined that one day I would leave my family. Growing up, my parents were my world. My siblings and I shared everything: laughter, meals, dreams. We were close, or so I thought. But as I grew older, something began to change inside me. I started feeling trapped, like a bird in a cage, longing to fly beyond the familiar walls of my home. The expectations placed on me felt heavier each day. My parents wanted me to follow a traditional path: finish school, get a stable job, marry, and stay close to home. But deep down, I had dreams that didn't fit into their plan. I wanted to explore the world, learn new languages, meet different people, and find my own path. Whenever I spoke about my dreams, they would nod politely, but never really listen. I didn't leave because I didn't love them. I left because I needed to find myself. Staying would have meant living a life that wasn't truly mine. I wanted to discover who I was beyond the roles my family had given me. It wasn't an easy decision. I spent countless nights lying awake, torn between my love for them and my need for freedom. The day I left, I packed my bag quietly. As I walked out of the door, I promised myself I would return. One day, not as the child they had always known, but as the person I was meant to become. Now, miles away from home, I miss them every day. But I know I made the right choice. This journey is teaching me more than I ever imagined. It's helping me grow in ways I could never have if I had stayed. One day, when I return, I hope they will understand why I left. Until then, I'll keep moving forward, building a life that feels truly my own. Even though I left, I didn't leave my love for them behind. I carried it with me in every step I took, in every new place I visited. I learned quickly that the world is not always kind. There were moments when I felt completely alone, wondering if I had made a terrible mistake. But every time doubt crept in, I reminded myself of why I left. I wasn't searching for comfort. I was searching for purpose. Living on my own taught me how to survive, how to be strong when things didn't go my way. I learned to cook, to manage my finances, and to make decisions without anyone else's approval. At first, it was overwhelming, but as time passed, I started feeling a new sense of pride. I was finally in control of my life. I met people who helped me see the world differently, people from different cultures, with stories of their own. They taught me lessons that no classroom or family discussion ever could. I began to understand that life is a journey, not a set path. And though my heart ached for my family, I knew that I had made the right choice by choosing myself for the first time. But leaving didn't mean I stopped caring about them. I still called whenever I could. The conversations were often short and formal, but at least it kept us connected. Over time, I noticed something changing. My parents no longer tried to convince me to come home. Instead, they started asking about my life. They became curious about what I was learning and experiencing. One evening, after many months of being away, my father said something that surprised me. He said, "I may not fully understand your reasons, but I respect them now." Those words lifted a weight off my shoulders. It was the first sign that perhaps one day they would truly see why I needed to go. Until then, I will keep living, learning, and growing. I believe that sometimes love means giving people space to find their way. That's what I did for myself. And perhaps, in doing so, I taught my family something too. I didn't leave to escape. Them I left to become someone I could be proud of. One day, when I return, I hope they will not only see who I've become, but also realize that I never truly left them behind. Time passed, and with every new experience, I felt myself changing. I became more independent, more confident. I learned to embrace uncertainty, something I once feared. I made new friends who felt like family, that deep down I knew nothing could replace the family I had left behind. There were nights when memories of home would flood my mind, the smell of my mother's cooking, the sound of my siblings laughing, and the comfort of knowing that no matter how bad things got, I was never truly alone. Those memories didn't make me regret leaving. They made me appreciate the love I had been given. One day after a particularly long week, I sat down and wrote a letter to my family. I poured my heart into every word, explaining why I left, what I had learned, and how much I still cared for them. It wasn't easy to put my feelings into words, but I knew they needed to hear it. I wasn't sure how they would react, but I hoped they would understand. Weeks went by without a response. I tried not to think about it too much, but part of me worried that maybe they were hurt or angry. Then, one evening, I received a call from my mother. Her voice trembled as she spoke, but there was warmth in her tone. She didn't say much, but what she did say meant everything to me. "We miss you," she said softly, "but we're proud of you too." Hearing those words brought tears to my eyes. It was the reassurance I didn't know I had been waiting for. It reminded me that even though I had left, my connection to them was still strong. That leaving home didn't mean leaving love. Behind it meant carrying it with me wherever I went. As the seasons changed, so did my relationship with my family. They began to accept my choices, and I began to feel less guilty about making them. Slowly, the distance between us didn't feel so great anymore. I knew I had chosen a different path, but in my heart, I would always belong to them.
And so, my journey continues. The world is vast, and there's still so much to see, so much to learn. But now, I know that wherever I go, I carry my family's love with me.
Not to lose them, but to find myself, and in doing so, I discovered that real love doesn't fade with distance. It grows stronger with understanding. One day I will return, not as someone who ran away, but as someone who found her way home. Months turned into years, and though I had settled into a life far from home, I never forgot where I came from. Every success I achieved, every challenge I overcame, felt incomplete without sharing it with my family. I often wondered what they thought of me now, whether they saw me as someone who abandoned them or as someone brave enough to chase a dream. I stayed connected as best as I could, occasional phone calls, letters, and video chats. Sometimes we laughed and caught up on small things. Other times, silence filled the space between us, reminding me that there were still wounds not fully healed. But I didn't let that silence discourage me. Relationships, like journeys, take time. One day I received a message from my younger sister. She had always been the quiet one, but in her words I could feel her longing. "When are you coming home? We miss you." It hit me deeply. I realized that while I had been finding myself, they had been waiting, missing the version of me they once knew. That message made me think, maybe it was time. Not to end my journey, but to revisit the place where it all began. I had grown in ways I never imagined, but something inside me said I needed to see my family again, not just for them, but for myself. It was time to show them who I had become. And so, I made a plan. I didn't tell them right away. I wanted it to be a surprise. I booked my ticket and began preparing for a visit that felt like a new chapter in my story. As the day of my departure approached, I felt both excited and nervous. Would they truly understand why I left? Would they accept who I had become? And so, I made a plan. I didn't tell them right away. I wanted it to be a surprise. I booked my ticket and began preparing for a visit that felt like a new chapter in my story.
As the day of my departure approached, I felt both excited and nervous. Would they truly understand why I left? Would they accept who I had become?
When the day finally arrived, I stood at the doorstep of my childhood home, bag in hand, heart pounding. Before I could knock, the door opened, and there they were, my family, exactly as I remembered, but somehow different. Their eyes lit up with a mix of surprise and emotion, and before I could say anything, my mother pulled me into a tight embrace. In that moment, I realized something important. I hadn't returned to prove myself. I hadn't come back to explain why I left. I returned because love, no matter how far it's stretched, has a way of bringing people back together. We spent hours talking, sharing stories, and catching up on the years we had missed. I told them about my journey, the people I met, and the lessons I learned. They listened, not with judgment, but with open hearts. For the first time, I felt truly understood. As the evening ended, my father, who rarely showed his emotions, looked at me and said, "You made us worry, but you also made us proud." Those words stayed with me. A reminder that love isn't about control, it's about letting go and trusting that the bond will remain. That night, as I lay in my childhood bed, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. I had left to find myself, and now, after years of searching, I realized that I hadn't lost my family, I had simply found a new way to love them. Leaving was necessary, but so was coming back. This isn't the end of my journey. There's still a world out there, waiting for me. But now, no matter where I go, I know I'll always have a place to return to, a place called home.